Hello, welcome to Catholic Life, ordinary people with extraordinary faith. I'm Deacon Jody Moscona. Thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about almost the present and the future all at the same time of what's going on. We're going to talk about the inclusion of some of our Spanish-speaking folks into one of our parishes, which happens to be my parish. I'm joined today by a Director of Religious Education from St. Theresa of Avila Parish, Mrs. Alice Blair. Hi. And Alice is a deacon wife, Deacon Bill Blair, and pleasure to work with Alice all the time at St. Theresa. And she's got a new companion in her office who is Miss Angela Tovar, who is bilingual, who helps with the formation program at St. Theresa. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so this is a long time coming, isn't it?
It is.
Okay, so Alice, you've been at St. Theresa for a long, long time, and you remember when, and that is when it all started, where there were Spanish-speaking folks in the area of St. Theresa that needed a place. And how did that manifest itself?
Well, it goes back probably 15, 16 years ago when Father Juan Terreno was involved with the Hispanic apostolate. And there were children as well as adults who needed to be educated in our area. So the diocese put out two T buildings across the street, which is still on our property as well. And they would actually hold religious education classes in those buildings.
For the Spanish-speaking kids?
For the students. They would have one building which kind of facilitated those who needed First Eucharist. And that was just a 2-year program. And then they had the other trailer where they would hold those students preparing for confirmation. And that also was just a 2-year program. So basically the children were only getting 4 years of religious education throughout their course at St. Theresa.
Okay, so from my perspective, and my reality is 4.5 years ago I was transferred to and assigned to St. Theresa. When I got there, it was the same time that Father Eric Guyan arrived, and we were basically told that all we needed to do for the Spanish-speaking folks was have a mass and allow them to use the buildings that were across the street, and we really had no interaction with them at all, and the people at the time were being supported by the Hispanic apostolate of the diocese.
That's correct.
Right. So, Angela, you were part of the Hispanic apostolate.
That's correct.
At the time, because being bilingual and Spanish husband, you needed to be involved with the Spanish-speaking community. Tell me what your involvement was at that time.
At that time, I was assistant. I was an aide for the First Communion class. And of course, in that facility, we gave the class, but there was no bathrooms. There was nowhere to take them. There was no water, no running water. So I own a boutique next door, so I would take the kids to my boutique to go to the restroom when they needed to go. And
so you were assisting in the formation of the kids in those two buildings. Now, what happened, I didn't come to work at St. Theresa for 2 years after I was assigned here. So it was 2.5 years ago that we were told, Father and I, what you just said, there were no facilities in those buildings, no restrooms, no water. We were told that sometimes they had to bring them all the way to the gas station to go to the bathroom. And when Father Eric had heard that, it just coincided, Alice, with us changing the old convent into classrooms, and you were a big part of that.
Yes.
And so you, at that time, tell us a little bit about the facility and what you had going on.
Well, their religious ed program has started to grow. And so instead of having like 15 children for First Eucharist and 15 or so for confirmation, they were more like 30 and 40 in each particular group. And so they actually had outgrown the facilities that they had as well. So Father Eric met with Father Alicia, I believe at the time, and they came and started using some of our facilities. But basically we just shared our building with them.
Yeah.
They were in charge of all their own catechists and all of things of that
Yeah.
nature.
So what I remember was Father Eric had no idea that there were no facilities over there. He had
Yes.
nothing to do with that because all we were doing was allowing the use of the church for a mass, which, by the way, was on Saturdays.
That's correct. It was at 7:30 on Saturdays.
And we had nothing to do with the education of the children. We were basically just allowing those buildings to be on our land and the use of the church. But when we were told that they had no facilities, Father Eric got really upset because he couldn't imagine us on our property not providing for children, at least properly, you know. And so he got with Father E and they moved the kids into the convent. And now we have shared facilities. And that's what you had to deal with.
That's correct. They were actually meeting on Tuesday evening, and then our PSR at St. Theresa was on Wednesday evening. So it was interesting.
And then didn't they also meet on Thursdays? They were using Tuesday and Thursday, and we were using Wednesday at first.
Some of the older children were.
Yeah, I think
well.
that's how it. So what happened was, Angela, when y'all moved into the convent, how was that?
Oh, everybody was excited. The teachers, the students, because now they had a place to go to the bathroom. There was water. You had a fountain for them to drink water. And we had the boards, the eraser boards, where we could help us teach. So it was really nice. Everybody was really, really excited that Father Eric opened the doors for us.
Okay, so for those that are watching, the point I think we're trying to get across is that we had a lot of folks in the Ascension Parish area that spoke Spanish, many of whom, maybe the kids spoke Spanish, but the parents, spoke English, but the parents
That's
didn't.
correct.
We had a menagerie, a whole lot of different situations, and a lot of it required somebody to speak Spanish. And we were willing to accommodate them, but we didn't know how. Is that fair? So we met with the diocese, and we made a deal when y'all started using the facilities, Angela. I don't know if you know about the deal, but the deal was you can use our facilities this year, but next year you got to join our program.
That's correct.
And what happened, we changed chaplains
Yes.
at the next year for the Hispanic apostolate, and that didn't happen. They didn't integrate into our program the next year, which was kind of a blessing, Alice, and we'll come to that in a minute, because we were not prepared.
We weren't ready.
Right. So for the next year, we met with the diocese and we got things together. And Alice, the bombshell was dropped on you, I would say. Tell us about how
Well,
you
initially,
had to prepare for this year.
Yeah, well, initially, the previous year, when they were using the convent, but we weren't in complete charge over it, they had about 100 students, I would say. Well, this year, when we started with registration and preparing, well, the more the word got out there, we would get more and more registrations. So we have ended up with about 150 Hispanic students this year who joined our program, and now we're over 300 students this year. So it's really nice. It's been a great inclusion.
Okay. So what also was going on at the time was we decided, we had a wonderful benefactor donate money to renovate the old convent, and we renovated into a kind of a really first-class religious education center. And that renovation was going on while this transformation of integrating the Spanish-speaking students into our programs was going on. So, Angela, you were part of that, where you had to get them into the school buildings and all that sort of stuff.
Yes, that was another experience that we had too, where they were a bit confused, the Hispanic families. They were like, okay, well, now we're going to be all together, you know, because we were separate, and now we're going to all be together. And I guess more the parents thought, well, you know, they're going to start teaching them in English. But once I told them, okay, they go to school and they're taught in English, they were okay because they knew I was going to be there. We also have a catechist that came and stayed with us as well that helps us, that speak both languages, and they're in the classes. They're aides, so they're there to help. So if there is a student that doesn't speak English, there's someone there to help them.
Okay, so there's another component to this whole thing, and that is the Hispanic Apostolate provides support for the Hispanic folks at the diocesan level, and they've been moved into St. Pius because St. Pius has been closed, and they do provide support for the families. Some, paperwork and different things that they need, but at the same time the diocese provides that. We were getting requests at St. Theresa for it, and we didn't have anybody to speak Spanish. So we reached out to Angela, and you've been on our staff for how long now?
Since July.
Since July. So it's well over half a year.
Yes.
And not only, and we're going to get into, Alice, into the educational part, but how important has it been for the folks that speak Spanish to have you at the office?
Oh, they said that it's been very helpful because they know now they can go in and ask anything, whatever they need, and they know there's going to be somebody there that can help them in their language.
It's been great for us because we used to get a phone call from somebody that spoke Spanish, and we'd have to forward it to the diocese, to the Hispanic Apostolate, and then they're in Ascension Parish, but they're talking to somebody in North Baton Rouge, and there was such a disconnect. And then we can't do everything for everybody, but we can certainly do something for most folks. And just providing you to be able to answer their questions and guide them has been pretty.
And what they liked about the most, Deacon Jody, was that it was somebody they already knew, because I'd been working with them already for a good 5 years. So that helped too.
So this has been a process. It's time to take a short break. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a break. When we come back, let's focus on the educational part, and that's really why Alice is here, so that we can talk about how we've been able to really have an integration that's been very successful. So we're going to take a short break. Stay with us. On the other side of the break, we're going to continue to talk about this kind of innovation that's going on at St. Theresa of Avila in Gonzales. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
When we talk about essential things to know about the liturgy, one of the things that we have to remember is that the Catholic Church is a sacramental church. Now, this doesn't mean simply that she has 7 sacraments. It means that this is a way of looking at the world. So the tradition of the church says, some see bread, but our faith tells us that it's the body of Christ, that it's Corpus Christi. Some see wine, but our faith tells us we drink the blood of Christ. The same thing applies to the church building. Our tradition tells us that the church building is not a neutral place. It's not simply a skin for the liturgical action, but rather it's a place where prayer happens. It is a sacramental sign, both of the body of Christ and of the heavenly Jerusalem. This is what Sacrosanctum Concilium means when she says this: the liturgy daily builds up those who are within into a holy temple of the Lord. This is based on St. Paul's writing in his letter to the Ephesians when he says, "You are strangers and aliens no longer. No, you are fellow citizens of the saints and members of the household of God." So when you see the structure, don't simply say to yourself, there's a church building, or this is a beautiful building, but say to yourself instead, faith tells me there's the body of Christ. When you see the door, say to yourself, I cross the threshold into the Holy of Holies. And when you enter in, say to yourself, I'm entering into the Garden of Eden. I enter into paradise.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us through the break. And it's really a fun show, this one I'm doing, because it's my parish and it's my folks. And it's really kind of a homey kind of familiarity here going on. We're talking about what's going on at St. Theresa of Avila in Gonzales, which is that we have made a move to integrate our Hispanic folks fully into our parish. And it's taken a lot of twists, and we're going to talk about the education part. But before we do that, let's talk about the sacramental part. Let's talk about the quinceañeras.
Yes.
So tell us what it is, and tell us how fun that is to have that part of the parish.
It's basically like a wedding. I mean, this when the girls become a young woman, and they celebrate their quinceañera. They have a mass, and then after that, they have their big party. But I mean, they wear these nice gowns. That's why I said it's like a wedding, because it's just as big as a wedding dress and just as expensive.
That's at 15.
Yeah, 15. That's
quinceañera
correct.
is.
It's at 15.
And so Father Eric actually got to do his first one.
He did. He already has 2 more lined up for this year, so he's really excited about that.
And so y'all are doing baptisms also?
Yes, we give them the baptism prep class in Spanish, and then they receive their baptism. Their children go to the 1:30 Mass, the Spanish Mass, and that's where they're baptized. So we're able to provide the baptism certificates
Which
at
is,
St. Theresa
Alice,
now.
that was one of the problems.
There was.
And this isn't a reflection on anybody in particular, but what was going on before was we had this Mass, and we have to bring in, just so everybody will know, we have to bring in a priest that speaks Spanish. So we still have, we don't have all the facilities we need, but when the baptisms would be done, sometimes the prep would have been done at the Hispanic apostolate, and everybody's looking for the certificates. And Alice, I remember you saying, "Who's doing this?"
Who's doing them? Yeah.
Because there was kind of a disconnect.
There was.
Because the folks didn't know whether they were part of St. Theresa or not. Well,
That's
do they now know?
They do. They do know. They've actually registered at St. Theresa as their parish.
Right, which has been awesome.
Yes.
So we got this transition going on.
We did.
got this little middle ground, and we need, you could tell the folks how kind of difficult this has been, but it's been great to have Angela to help you.
Oh, it has been. This year we're kind of in a unique situation in that we have a lot of Hispanic students who range from 2nd grade through 5th or 6th grade level, who some hadn't even been baptized, but most had been baptized, and they needed to make First Eucharist to begin with, and then we will go up from there with confirmation. And also it was the understanding and working with these parents so that they understood that after First Eucharist, religious education didn't stop there. Because previously their child came for 2 years, made First Eucharist, and they didn't see them back until 9th grade. So what we're doing now is incorporating these kids this year into kind of a special class. So we have about 60 of these students who will, like I said, grades 2 through about 6, will do actually reconciliation on Tuesday night and then make their First Eucharist in May. And then next year we are going to move them up into the grade level in which they are in school, so that they can then be attending class with their peers and stuff.
So we have to have this bridge.
Correct.
Where we go from where they were, where they have 2 years of prep for communion and 2 years of prep for confirmation, to where now they know that after this year, they'll be in the PSR class of the grade that they're in school.
Correct.
So how have the people taken that?
At first it was confusing to them because of course they were used to something else, but now, I mean, everything's fine. They're understanding. Father Eric, I actually had 11 that were in Confirmation 1 with the Hispanic community last year. When we changed over, Father Eric said that they would be confirmed this year, and they were actually confirmed on Monday.
When the bishop came
When
to
the
the
bishop came
confirmation
to-
with your
Yes,
confirmation
without-
students,
Yes.
which
So,
is
yeah.
really awesome.
It was
because
awesome.
a third of all the
That's-
confirmation candidates were from the Hispanic community. So we
Correct.
really, that was a visualization of the integration of the two communities into one, which was really awesome.
Yes.
And the ladies that served communion that were all dressed up, you know, it was really kind of cool, you know. And so, Angela, talk about the cultural benefit of mutual cultural benefit of the English kids getting to know about the Spanish culture and the Spanish kids getting to know about the Indian. Has that had kind of a mutual trade-off?
It's more on the parent side because, like I said earlier, the kids are used to going to school, you know, with the English
Right.
students. So it's more the parents learning, you know, how the parish runs, and, you know, again, that, like Miss Alice said, after you receive your first communion, you continue going to religion, where before we didn't see them till they were in 9th grade.
Right.
So that's been, you know, where they're learning, you know,
Yeah.
and they're okay
Another
with it.
thing, Alice, that I've seen, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, and Angela, you too, it seems to me that in the Hispanic community, that they're used to paying as they go for a lot of things. And Father Eric is one that says, you don't have to pay for your sacraments.
Right.
That's
And it's
correct.
kind of caused this little, you mean we don't have to pay? Well, it's not that you don't pay, we just depend on our collection to support our, so that has been a kind of an educational kind of
That's
thing.
correct. Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
So
really-
it's really been kind of fun to put all
It
this
has
together.
been.
So Alice, from the perspective of numbers, so before this year to now, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, on Wednesday evenings from 6 to 7, we have our PSR classes for grades 1 through 6. And this year, when we started adding up all of our numbers, plus the inclusion of those from the Hispanic group into ours, we had to move our 6th graders onto Sunday with our high school group. And instead of having about 80 to 90 on a Wednesday evening, we have 180 in grades 1 through 5, and then our staff. So it's really very interesting, and it's interesting at dismissal to try to get all those cars into the parking lot and deal with the different cultures. Like, I want to park over here and stop and go get my kid versus, would you please kind of stay in line? And, you know, it's taken a while, but it's January and we're finally getting there. But, yeah.
So it's just a kind of an awesome growth, you know, and it really reflects what's going on in Catholic America. You know, that a large part of the Catholic community in America is Hispanic.
Yes.
And we need to find a way to make this work. And this little test effort in Gonzales is working.
It is.
It's pretty awesome.
It is pretty awesome.
It's pretty awesome. Now, the one fun part was when we had the centennial.
Oh,
We'll
yeah.
probably show a picture of that. The Hispanic choir came and performed, which was pretty awesome.
Yes. The tamales.
And the tamales, the
Tamales,
food.
oh.
So we had food at the centennial celebration to kick off, and we had, you know, the Knights of Columbus did what, hamburgers and hot
Hot
dogs.
dogs,
And,
and we-
then, how many? Like a gazillion.
We had over 600 tamales.
And I think they were the hit.
They were the hit. I was actually serving jambalaya, and Angela's next to me serving tamales. Well, she had more people in her line than I did. And it was like St. Teresa parishioners, once they tasted those tamales, they were back in her line.
And we're the jambalaya capital of the world.
I couldn't get rid of
but
jambalaya.
we couldn't get rid of jambalaya. We were serving tamales,
It was wonderful.
and it's so much fun to have this. And I keep using the word integration. I hate to even use that word because now we're just one.
Yeah, we
That's
are.
right.
We've been infused into one community. It's been so much fun, and I think us being stepping out, taking a risk, it's kind of, I think it's paid off for your
agree.
folks and for ours too. So what is the general mood in the Hispanic community now? Do they feel like they're part of the parish?
They do. They do. They've always tell me every time I see them at Mass, they're like, tell Father Eric, thank you for, like I said, opening the doors for us.
Right, and you know, and it's not without some problems because Father Eric's trying to learn how to do the Mass because he doesn't speak Spanish. We have to get priests to come in, and we're just blessed because the priests at Redemptorist or St. Gerard who are the Redemptorist priests speak Spanish, and they come all the way out to Gonzales to say Mass, which is pretty awesome. And to support ministerially some of the folks, because like I said, we're not yet ready to be able to provide everything for everybody, but we're getting there. We're trying.
We're getting there.
So also from the diocesan perspective, sometimes we still need to send them there for some of those passport issues or immigration issues, stuff like that, because we're not capable of doing that kind of stuff. And the folks know that, and I don't think they're mad at us for it.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah, we also have 11 people in her Hispanic RCIA process. And at St. Theresa, we have 8 in ours. But come Easter time, they're all going to join together at St. Theresa for the Easter Vigil.
That's
so
cool.
that's going to be cool, too. So we're working to get to that.
And like when we did the confirmation, we did one of the readings in Spanish.
Correct.
And so we're starting, I mean, we're learning. And when Father Eric learns Spanish, then he can say the Spanish Mass, and we'll be down the road. And he is, you know.
Yeah. And we've changed our missalettes at church, too. Our missalettes are now bilingual.
Right.
So it's really helping people see it and accept it as well.
And we added signs on our campus, which were never there, and they're in both English and Spanish, which is pretty cool. And we have Spanish. You translate some of the stuff in the bulletin to Spanish for our bulletin editor. So we're easing into this where we're one community.
Yes.
So,
we also have ministries there in Spanish. So we have the men's prayer group there that meet on Fridays, and then we have the evangelization class as well, and they meet on Tuesdays.
So yeah, so
we're getting there.
We're rocking and rolling, right, Alice?
We are rocking and rolling.
So that's
so
awesome.
And one thing too that's good about having Angela, who is bilingual, any note I send home via my PSR students or mail home to parents, one side of the page is English and the other side of the page is Spanish, because we have a lot of parents who don't understand the English language yet, and they're getting there. And that's one of our priorities we talked about today for next year, is trying to perhaps offer an ESL class.
English is a second language.
Correct, during our PSR program for those parents who need that.
Wow, we've laid a lot on your heart today, and we wanted to share with you what was going on at St. Theresa, because this is the future. It's going to be going on at a lot of parishes, and we wanted to tell you how successful it's been. So we appreciate y'all for coming in today.
Thank you for having us.
It's a long ride from Gonzales. And we want to thank you for watching. We appreciate you always watching the show. So till next time, God bless everyone.